are live here with Melissa Daw. Thank you for coming in, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.
What's going on?
What's going on? Always busy in the lower school. Excited to just be there here and hang out, talk about books and all that great stuff.
What's happening in the lower school these days?
So we are heading into summer reading. So we have been collecting our summer reading lists and getting everything ready for those boys to have some great things to enjoy.
Do they get choices for the summer reading?
They sure do. Yeah. So pre-K through first grade can read really whatever they want and be read to. And then students who are going into second, third, fourth, and fifth grade have one required book. Everything else is free choice. And we kind of give them like a 10-book goal, I guess you would say. So, we have a few classes that have already come through. The boys can pick out up to 10 books to take home for the summer in the older grades.
Oh, that's good. They take them out of the library. I feel like they used to make me buy my books in the summer reading.
Maybe. I think a lot of families choose to purchase the required title, but everything else we just have out for the kids to enjoy. So they love it, and they just feel they've got their bags, and they're just like filling in their bags. And then our fifth graders have visited the Walter Lord Library, and they get to hear from Mr. Welch and get some fabulous, fun book talks from him and Mrs. McNear. And they learn about the summer reading for their incoming sixth grade adventure, and they check out from the middle school so that they can return it to the middle school the following school year. So it's their second visit to the middle school. So it's an opportunity for them to just get comfortable in the new space and to meet their awesome new, middle school librarian.
Yeah, so that's happening next year as fifth grade is going to be in the middle school.
No, fifth grade won't be moving.
2 years from now.
Right, but we've always had a tradition of the fifth graders getting to look at the middle school books. We do one visit in the spring, and then we do summer reading visits. And that's where they can get to pick their summer reading titles. And they're really ready to graduate from the lower school library. They're really excited to just see new books, new covers, a new librarian. I mean, some of them have had me since kindergarten, so they're ready to move on. Although they do always like to come back and notice how everything looks so much smaller than what they recall. So it's always great when we have the boys come back and visit for a little bit. But our fifth graders they're ready to go.
Yeah. So is library a class in the lower school? Do you have your own class, or is it just sort of there for them to come in and read when they have free time?
So it's a fixed class. So every class visits the library in the 10-day cycle on a fixed number of visits or classes. A lot of it is collaborative with the teachers, depending on what they're doing, but it is instruction provided by myself or by Miss Exter, who does our early childhood program. Additionally, we have the library open from 2:30 to 3, and that is an open time for our older students to come and do some more reader's advisory, especially our fifth graders. They enjoy coming from 2:30 to 3. Right now, we have third and fifth graders really using up our 2:30 to 3 time with their research. Third grade is doing their National Parks capstone research, and that's a collaborative effort between myself, Mrs. Stolzenbach, the science teacher, and each homeroom teacher. So we coordinate our lessons and we share in the delivery of those lessons, and then I support a lot with the extra research. Both inside and outside the library. So there may be fixed classes inside the library, but a lot of times we also have teachers reach out. So I am actually spending a lot of time in fifth grade working on bibliographies and helping them locate sources for their historical perspectives paper, in addition to having also had lessons that were structured in the library. So we do a combination of both, but we are on a fixed schedule for those classes. We do so much outside of those classes to just promote, the joy of reading. And we just had our first cross-divisional Black-Eyed Susan reader program. So the Black Eyed Susan is a Maryland reading program where a group of educators, librarians select a certain number of books in different categories, and there are requirements to belong to that category if you read the book. So for example, in 4th and 5th grade, there are 10 graphic novels and 10 chapter books that are nominated, and we do book talks about them, and there are prizes along the way. So anyone who reads, in one category, in both categories, there are incremental prizes. And then the grand prize, which we had last week, is a luncheon with Mr. Smythe. And so we started the program. We started the program 6 or 7 years ago. We maybe had 1 or 2 kids. We went to 4 or 5. Last year, I think we had 8. And this year we had 16 lower schoolers finishing the program, having had read 20 books on top of everything they have to do already in their regular day, in their regular school year. Middle school had, I believe, 6. So we had our first 6 middle schoolers. They get their own list, and then upper school had 10 to read, and we had one student who came to the luncheon, and so Mr. Smythe got to see all these.
Wait, so one student in the upper school read the 10 additional books?
10 additional books, and I don't know his last name, but I believe his name is Dylan, and he was in the musical as well.
Mm-hmm. Dylan Moyer, he was excellent in the musical.
Yes, yeah. Dylan Moyer, that's his last name. And I've managed to see him 3 or 4 times now on campus, so it's been really special. And the younger boys have really, especially those who saw the musical, got to see him also as a reader, so that was very inspirational for them. And then eventually, those who perform piano and had their recital last week got to see him do this amazing piece, play this amazing piece at the recital, and I think they were blown away. And so it's just great to be able to tell those younger boys, like, you can be all these things. You can do this, you can read, you can also go out and play sports, but the school really recognizes and celebrates you that way. And Mr. Smythe gave wonderful, advice and just ideas about how to continue being a reader and how important reading and writing are connected. And I think it was really fun to see him with a 9-year-old all the way to, a 16-year-old or 15-year-old. So it was really, really special.
So I wonder why we have younger students willing to do, I know that time becomes an issue when you get a little bit older, but I don't know if I buy that, because Dylan Moyer's in the musical. He's doing a lot of hours. You said he plays an instrument too. He's got a lot going on too. Yeah. So I would like to know why older students are not reading as much.
I don't know. We also allow the kids to do it audio or, ebook. So the method in which you read is not necessarily, we don't mandate that it be the actual physical book, because we want to give the boys a way to appreciate and enjoy literature in any format. Some people are more, auditory than others. So I'm not sure. I think it just started in middle school and upper school. We didn't have the Black Eyed Susan reading program, so this is new. So I feel like we can only grow. We can only move from there, and we can grab those 5th graders who were in the Black Eyed Susan program. We can grab them and we can get them in middle school. But I don't think I know this wouldn't be possible without also like a team effort. So in the lower school, I'm incredibly indebted to my team, Blair Exter, Chanley Sweeper, and Alice Garden, because it requires a lot of us kind of jumping in and saying, hey, have you read this? Or have you thought, you already read 3, hey, only 2 more and you get the next prize. So there's just a lot of also advocacy and a lot of personal connection with boys, especially if it's a book they wouldn't have necessarily picked up, but to be able to say, well, remember, you didn't think you liked this one, and in the end, you pushed through, and it's one of the best books you've ever read, and you've now recommended it to like 3 of your best friends, so why don't you try another one on the list?
That's true. I think there's a lot more of that in the lower school and the middle school, where the librarians are sort of, I think the librarians in the upper school do the same thing, but I think it's just a little bit more challenging with older kids. But I think giving students the option of a bunch of different genres and different types of books that they can read. Like we were doing a project in my English class a few weeks ago where the students went to the library and just had to pick one book or one short story or one poem that they were interested in. Mm-hmm. And then they had to present on it and read it or talk about it for 3 minutes. That was it. And a couple of the students in my class were reading these books. I could tell they weren't that interested. And they're athletes. And I was like, read something to do with sports. If you love, if sports is your thing and you love sports, that's great. Why don't you try reading something about sports? Anything that will get a book in your hand that you'll be excited about.
So can we talk about something recent that I did with the upper school that I think shows that Gilman really thinks outside the box? And so I was approached by Beth Knapp and her class, and she both her sons have gone through the lower school, so we have already a relationship, even just as parents, or her knowing as a parent that what the library can offer in the lower school and the middle school and the upper school. She's worked in the upper school, and she has students who were studying civil rights and protest movements.
Yep.
And historical movements of protest and civil rights. And their final project was to create a picture book that would uncover some of the kind of dark parts of the history, but also be a way to engage in a topic with younger children. Mm-hmm. And I think she knows that I'm a big proponent of like the picture book as a teaching tool for older kids. I think that sometimes if you can have something short and sweet that's incredibly well written, that's documented, that has a lot of other history on the back, it's kind of a taste of that moment. And I've often suggested, I was a middle school librarian, as well before coming to Gilman. And sometimes I would just take out the picture book. So for example, like there's a book that I love about Alcatraz and kids living on Alcatraz Island. And it's, it's like 100 pages. It's a nonfiction book written like a narrative with pictures. And then after that, I was able to, suggest like Al Capone Does My Shirts by like Chodenko, because it just sparks an interest. There's definitely a big interest in nonfiction in our younger boys. But it gets them into that fiction as well. So sometimes pairing books together can be really fun. So with Beth, she reached out and asked, could they come and look at could I pull books for her class, her high school class, her senior class? And so they came and they had all these different books about, the civil rights. There were also, not only from the 1940s, the Black Civil Rights Movement, but all other ways to protest, gender equity movements, ways in which to promote, just an understanding for kids about things that may not have been recognized through history and how people have, brought it to light or protested it. And so I did a little presentation. I shared some of my favorite authors, and I gave them all these picture books, and they spent the time, looking at picture books. And some of them learned things just from that look in that picture book that sparked their interest in a topic. And then they read more about the topic, and then they wrote their own picture book, and they came back and they read their picture books to the librarians. So next year, my hope is that they could come back and read it to some of the kids, with a little more planning. But it just happened kind of organically, and we just had a great time. So picture books for me, I think it doesn't matter how old you are. We have another teacher who reached out. She's teaching, I think, the Cold War, and checked out, a Dr. Seuss book. So I think there's ways to weave those books in, and authors. There's just been such a plethora of incredibly well-written nonfiction picture books, uncovering moments of history that were hidden or maybe hard to share with kids, but that they kind of need to know.
Right.
And I think it's important to have those on the shelf for all ages.
I think the picture books really help lure you into a fascination or an interest in the material. I've got a U.S. history class that maybe I can bring them down on their last couple days of classes. I'm sorry I'm getting to you late, but maybe I can bring them to
I would love that.
because we're getting to the 1960s right now in my class. We're getting to the civil rights movement. We're going to run out of time. U.S. history is a tough class to teach. It's my first year teaching it, but it's like you start in 1492 or with the explorers, from Portugal and Spain.
I would love to see your students. I mean, I think it's
I think that would be fun.
I think it would be really fun, and I'd be happy to share some of our favorites. I just think it's a great way to also, close off a topic, or close a topic after a conversation, or spark a conversation to begin a topic. And
I would like to look at some of those that series, Who Was This Person, which was always interesting to me. I read those when I was younger because of the really colorful cover. And I think the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover" actually gets a bad rap, because a lot of times the cover is what makes you interested in a book.
So I would agree with you, and I think again this idea, there's been such a huge outburst of books in the nonfiction kind of narrative industry, with illustrators that are just outstanding. I think sometimes that's the only way to do it, and I think our kids are more and more connected to visuals, and I think they're really important. I also think the difference between art and photography will either grab a student or scare a student away. So if it's a difficult topic, those illustrations sometimes are a vehicle for a younger kid to give a little more distance between the event and the story that's being told, so there's a little bit more digestion that's available. Some of our older students, they really, really want the books that tell a story but have photography. And for me, they're a vehicle to teach some of the more important skills that they're going to need in 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way through. And I start as early as 2nd, which is primary sources. So a lot of times I'll just read the story and say, well, how do you think this author even knew what these people were thinking? And that's when we start talking about, well, diaries, or maybe there was a letter, or maybe somebody had an interview. And so it's kind of also a really great way to introduce them to all these things they're going to be seeing in terms of when they have to do research in 4th and 5th, where they're actually looking at documents. So I just did a lesson in 2nd grade with about Pete the pigeon, who was this famous pigeon who lived to be 25 years old. And there's actual documents, newspaper articles. There's his deed from the cemetery where he died. And I give the kids magnifying glasses, and they have to read some of the information and figure out from those primary source documents, from the story that I told them from the book, what did they think the author used out of those to tell the story? And we talk about, nonfiction informing, primary sources informing nonfiction narrative. So it's really fun. And then I had a student give me a great idea and said, you should have the next classes, find the word Pete at least 10 times in all of these primary source documents, because I found the word Pete 10 times, and I thought that's brilliant. So sometimes I'm learning from kids how to actually use the books and the documents. So that was fun. So the next time around, that's what I had them do. Somebody found Pete 12 times. So.
Well, what's nice is you can be really creative in the things that you do down there in the lower school library. So how did you find an interest in books and reading and becoming a librarian? Where did that start?
I've always loved to read. I can't remember a time that I didn't love to read. And I remember, learning how to read. I grew up overseas, and I was I grew up in France, and I went to a French school, but it took a while to get there. So on the bus ride there, public bus ride, my mother taught me how to read in English. And I still see myself learning. And the first book I ever read on my own was Corduroy. And I guess I was reading it. My mother didn't even know that I had figured out really how to read. And she found me in her closet, all snuggled up, the smell of her clothes. And she couldn't believe it. She said, no, you're not reading, And I just turned around and I read the whole book for her. And it wasn't necessarily a book that we had memorized. So that just kind of remains a really strong reading memory for me. I actually had to write about my first reading memory in library school. They asked us to do that, so I had to like dig in, but I didn't dig too deep because I remember that. And the fact that I read in both languages. I'm bilingual, so it's like I had double the amount of books, that I could read. I could just read all the time. So I love to read. And
have you ever read Les Mis?
The original one? Yeah,
Victor Hugo?
Yeah, a long time ago. A long time ago. I haven't read the original one, but because Madame Georgis also teaches it, it's really fun to like read it. She teaches it through the movie, but it's kind of fun that way. But yeah, no, I mean, I've always been reading, and after college, I thought I just wanted to be an elementary school teacher, so I taught for a year in an international school in Boston. And they didn't really have a library, bilingual library there, or a library, and I started like putting books together, and my mother had said something to me like, you should think about being like a school librarian. And I was like, school librarian, I don't, well, and I started looking into what that degree meant, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is everything I love to do. It's reading, it's culture, it's history, science, because when you're a school librarian, you basically are given sometimes a research topic that, you thought you knew all the research topics for the 5th grade historical perspectives paper, and then this amazing 5th grader comes and says, I want to study, Judaism in colonial America, and you have to start educating yourself. So I feel like I always like doing research. And so in college, and so I went to grad school, I got into Pitt, and I went to grad school and got my master's in library and information science, and I haven't looked back since. And so I guess my mom was right,
Well, I like the point about being a curious person and working in the library, because I'm sure there's so many topics that you don't think about that were instrumental in maybe U.S. history. Let's just take that subject as an example, that come up. Oh, here's a book on this particular thing that I could flip through. It's something I never knew about before. So maybe that's a good idea for when I bring my upper school kids to the library. I'm doing this final paper, and one of the prompts, there are 7 different prompts, but one of the prompts is a creative prompt, and you choose 3 different difficult, just use the word difficult, moments in U.S. history, and write from the perspective of a fly on the wall. And so in that case, you have to know all about the history of what actually happened in order to, so it's almost a 2-part assignment. It's not easy, but I feel like they could, because everyone in my class was like, what are you guys doing? They all said, oh, I'm going to do the fly on the wall one. I'm going to do it from Abe Lincoln assassination. And that's great, but that's like, that would be my first thing that pops into my head. Like, there are definitely so many more difficult moments in U.S. history that would be interesting to explore that aren't like the, I don't know, most popular one.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you, I just, that's why I love what I do, because it's never the same every day. The kids, the students teach me so much, or they spark something in me, especially here. There's just the amount of curiosity and energy and enthusiasm there is around just books and learning, and it is just kind of infectious for me. And I the more difficult the topic, like the more fun I have, and the better it is. I work really closely with Nick Schloter in the 5th grade. He and I feel we like to get the challenge of the topic that might be really hard to find, and then we're like, well, did you find this? And so the other day he found 2 for me that I was like, ooh, how did you uncover those? I had done a search, and then I'm finding things for him. And so and it's been an incremental collaboration, and so I work very closely with all 3 5th grade teachers. But I think that passion for history and understanding and learning, I'm just really glad there are other teachers, and there's so many teachers in the lower school like that really, are really fascinated with things. I mean, I knew nothing about life and species in the national parks, and with the small 3rd grade capstone national parks project, it started. Mrs. Ryder, Jen Ryder created this like amazing project, and then it turned into something that the science teacher wanted to build on, and I also still wanted to do my parts of the skills, and it's just turned into this huge thing. And so the kids are walking around, and we're helping them also build these connections in their brain. It's not, you're doing this in this class, you're doing this in this class, you're doing this in this class. It's also, hey, I talked to the science teacher. I know you're looking at this. So remember, the strategy we use to take notes for this is going to be the same as you use in science. And I think the more we can build those bridges for them when they're young, the more we're equipping them with really lifelong work habits and lifelong, research methodology, even though they don't realize it at the time. They just think they're having fun and learning about some crazy animals in the park, because they get to create a hybrid. They get to look at two animals that would survive in the park, and then they have to create a new animal that's going to have better survival skills. And so they love it. So it's got the creative part, but there's so much of the research, at the bottom part of it. So it's just things like that.
Which national parks have the most diversity of species or animals? And Everglades, maybe? Everglades?
I don't know. I was amazed this year. So the national parks did a new drop-down list. I wish they had this, when we started the project. But you can drop down and you can look at the park and then decide also by category, like mammals, reptiles. And it's incredible to me. Some of the parks were, in the past, I thought we'd only have 4 or 5 choices. Now it's like every single animal is listed. The kids don't even know what to pick because it's, 25 animals come down, including like the smallest, butterfly or insect. And so a lot of times the boys will pick things with really cool names because, it's just fun. It just makes the project really fun. So I don't think I can answer that question for you. But
Yellowstone, I'm sure.
But if you go to, the npspecies.org on the National Park Service, you can probably ask, you can probably do that research. Or I could help you do that research later on. So.
Have you been to any national parks?
No, I have not. Well, I shouldn't say that. We've been to, my son was in the 3rd grade, and there was an option for them to, get special badges if they visited parks. And so we did do several in the area that we didn't know. My husband's gone to a few. But no, I haven't really traveled much of the United States in terms of outside of, California, Arizona, and the East Coast, just because whenever we have time off, I'm going back home. So my kids are bilingual and they get the French experience. And so I haven't really had a chance to have personal vacations. It's all really been related to getting us connected with our family that's overseas.
So where in France are you from? Are you from Paris?
So I was born in Paris in the 14th, but my family is originally, we believe, has some Flemish background from Flanders. My last name is D.A., but it was D''AA, which, D' usually means like of the region of. So we were of the region of A. There's still a river called the River of Ah. But, during World War I, there were different like borders changed. Some things belonged to France, some things then were right at that border. And so that's one of my bucket list things. I want to go where that region is, and I just want to see like where I'm from. But we originally thought, maybe it's Russian, but with more research, we have found that there is that's the region, but it's just the apostrophe. We lost the apostrophe and lost an A, and now we're DA. So that's. But originally, my dad's family had some property in the south of France, so we have some southern French roots. But I grew up. I went to school west of Paris, and I lived there until I was 17 and moved.
Oh wow!
For college.
Oh wow! Okay. If someone was going to Paris for the weekend, where would you tell them to go? Well, it's big city, a lot to do.
I'm a big believer in just
exploring.
Feeling, so I was an anthropology major in college, and I just love looking at behaviors of people and cultural patterns, and I just think sometimes when you're just walking, you're taking in the environment. If it were my choice, I don't know that I would say go to the Eiffel Tower or go here. Or I would say, if you're only going to be there for 2 days, just go to a bookstore,
go to a cafe,
go to a bookstore, have I don't know if I can say, have a Kier, which is white wine and red currant, black currant liqueur, and that's kind of like one of the things, or a Monaco, which is another one of family favorites, which is like grenadine and beer, like mixed together, and just hang out there and just see the movement,
People watch.
See the people, do the people watching. But if I only had one weekend, I just want to go home because it's hard. I mean, I have always felt like I have one foot in one country, one foot in another, and while I've been here now longer than I've been in France, when you think about it, I've lived here longer, I still miss France a lot when I'm here. And then when I go to France, I don't miss the US as much because I know I'm going to come back, but I definitely feel American. It's a very I think it's just the syndrome of the bicultural child. You just feel like you're never quite in one culture completely because
Gotcha.
you're split.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I'm going to Paris this summer for a weekend.
Fun.
And
okay, well,
it's right before the Olympics, and half the people I've talked to about this say you should definitely go to the Olympics. What are you doing? And half have said you'd be crazy to be anywhere near that city.
So we tried to get tickets to go home this year. We didn't go home last year, but we're going to go home this year, or go to my other home. I don't know. It's just the weirdest thing, right? Home is such a relative term, but my brothers will be there as well. We always try to find a little bit of time where we're all overlapping so the cousins can hang out. But yeah, so we looked at tickets, and we are leaving way before the Olympics and even coming back before the Olympics even start because the price of the tickets were outrageous.
Really?
Outrageous.
Yeah.
We'll grab a T-shirt or something. We'll grab an Olympic souvenir, but we're not going to necessarily,
I think it'd be cool to be there during the Olympics, but too many people, too crowded.
Yeah.
Pickpockets, all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, pickpockets. You see that everywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
But I feel like in a crowded environment like that, I don't know. It'd be a lot for me.
I think TVs are so great. I mean, you can see so much of it. You just feel like you're there. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Just watch it from a cafe. Go to a cafe and watch the Olympics from there. Then you get both experiences.
That's true. One of the coolest places I've been in near Paris, I guess. I don't know if it's actually in Paris. Sacré-Cœur?
Sacré-Cœur. So Sacré-Cœur is in Paris. It's in one of the arrondissements.
It's a bit of a walk from kind of the main area of Paris.
It is, yeah. That used to be, that still remains one of my favorite areas. I just really enjoy seeing everyone painting, there.
That church is just beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, it's stunning.
Yeah. I have many pictures of us at the top of the Sacré-Cœur and the view. So that is definitely.
So you grow up, you're 17 in Paris, you come to America, you go to Pitt, you said?
No, I went to Wesleyan.
You went to Wesleyan?
I went to Wesleyan, and then I did my grad school at Pitt. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is Wesleyan's Connecticut, right?
Yeah, it is.
Connecticut, and then Pitt.
Middletown, Connecticut.
So how'd you get to Baltimore?
I mean, so I met my husband in Boston, where I got my first job, out of grad school. Out of college. And then I applied to grad school and got at Pitt. And in that time, I met my husband in Boston, and we had a long-distance relationship. And then I moved back, did a little bit of working in Boston, and then he got a postdoctoral at Northwestern. So I went there and I taught for 3 years. I was a school librarian in Chicago, or outside of Chicago, while he was there, and then he got a position at Hopkins.
Gotcha.
So I guess, he's in the sciences. It's much harder for him. It's so tracked, and I had a lot more flexibility. So, my deal was, though, I said, if we're going to Chicago, I want to be there at least 3 years. Usually postdocs are 2 years, but I wanted 3 years for myself so I could have a real job when we moved again. And so we that's what we did. And we got married in Chicago. We got married while we were there. So.
What'd you think about living in Chicago?
Oh, we loved it.
Yeah.
We loved it. But we didn't have kids, and we didn't have a car. We just it was really fun. We really enjoyed it. We were in Evanston, which is not in Chicago proper, but we spent a lot of time
Take the
hanging out.
train in, right? It's pretty easy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Northwestern's campus is one of the most beautiful campuses I've seen.
It is beautiful. The quality of life there, you're right on the water. So, it was really fun. It was a fun
What lake
time.
is that right there? Is that Lake Michigan?
Lake Michigan.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, Chicago is interesting to me. I think I would live in Chicago. I wouldn't live in New York City. It's too crowded, too busy.
You might like Boston though, because you're
I would love Boston.
intellectual. Yeah, I think you would love Boston. We loved Boston.
I would move
and
back to
I don't,
Boston.
music, like it's just such a great music scene too. My husband.
Good comedy.
Good comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good doctors. So you're good. Right? It's got good medical schools too.
The Institute of Art. I went there this past fall, which was a cool experience.
Yeah. New York's too crazy. I did an internship when I was a junior because I thought I wanted to go into publishing, and I liked the job. I mean, I made a lot of great. Even young, it just was amazing. I mean, I met all these Kevin Henkes and Donald Cruz, like all of these Anita Lobel, like all these people who are like the gurus and the giants in the picture book industry and the writing industry, and it was wonderful. But I hated just getting there, like to the place. It was too intense for me. People were like too fast. I felt like I was swept away, like, the light wouldn't even change, and I was like swept away in the morning with the crowd, and I'd be in front of the building and be like, how did I walk this fast?
Yeah.
It was too much for me.
Yeah, I don't love people making you feel rushed, like when they're walking behind you. And Chicago, you can be in the city and feel like you're in the city, but there's not that feeling of I need to get somewhere.
Everybody's also a little more.
Yeah, a little bit nicer and.
Well, yeah, just more relaxed. More relaxed. So.
Yeah.
For sure.
So Melissa, let's get to your book recs today.
Okay.
What did you bring in for us?
So I brought one of my favorite book that I read as a kid, or I would say, not young adult, maybe like same thing, 4th, 5th grade. I didn't bring the French version of what I would have liked, but if I can mention it, like one of my favorite books it's called Les Malheurs de Sophie. It's like the disaster of Sophie, and Sophie basically is really naughty. And I was the older sister. I was the older child. I was always having to like take care of my brothers, and I always looked at her like kind of like, oh, she gets to be so naughty and do all these naughty things. And I think it was like an alter reality for me, and it was funny. So I mean, she does crazy things like brings takes somebody else's chocolates and then tries to hide them in her pocket, and then they all melt on her white dress, and she gets in trouble with that, and I don't know, it's I just like that. And then the other book the book that I love, and I don't know that it's really aged very well, because I've recommended it to other students and they haven't been as excited about it as I was, but it's Homecoming by Cynthia Voigt.
I know that book, or I know that author.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's done.
Cynthia Voigt is big.
Yeah. So Cynthia Voigt, this was the first. This is about Dicey, and Dicey and her brothers go. There's 4 of them, and they get dropped off, or they're supposed to be going to the grocery store with their mom, and so she goes to the grocery store and she parks the car and she says, "I'm going to be right back. Just wait for me. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to." Get some food or whatnot, and she doesn't come back. And all Dicey has is these brown bags with her grandmother. Supposedly she has a grandmother, her grandmother's address, where that address is, and her brothers to care for. And I was big sister to 2 boys, I had 2 brothers myself. And her journey and her like fighting for her family and the adventure part, but also, the survival part, and then just having to make decisions, having to buy things, having to go across the country to find this grandmother. I couldn't put it down, and I don't know, it's because I saw myself in her in terms of loving her brothers so much and wanting to do what was right. Or being, hoping she would get close to her grandmother, because I was very close to my American grandmother. I don't know what it was, but that book still continues to resonate with me. So Homecoming is amazing, and it's the first book in this Tillerman family saga. So then there's a couple of others that come afterwards, and more about what happens to the family. But the very first one is Homecoming. But you can see it's a little shiny, like it doesn't look like it's moved a lot. But so those are kind of my personal books. And then I was telling you about my love for picture books and history and the art of just the art of telling a story. So this is called How Do You Spell Unfair? And it's by one of my ultimate favorite picture book historians, Carole Boston Weatherford, who came to our school as well. I got her to come a couple years ago. She did the Tuskegee Airman book for the upper school boys. Her son Jeffrey is a scratch artist, and they just won a big award for Kin. I don't know if you've seen it on display in the library, in the upper and the middle school. Kin is their kind of family story, and I just think that she's revolutionized the way history is told to children. And I followed her. I had her at my school when I was working in the city, 20 years ago, when she was just starting out. And I've been following her, and I just think she's doing great things. And she's got phenomenal illustrators that she works with. She's a master storyteller. Her writing is just, it is poetry. I mean, she does a lot of her nonfiction is through verse, which I think is really interesting. And I think, to your point of what you were saying earlier about how hard it is to understand a historical moment when you have all this information, you have to capture like the most important part or tell the story to a child. I think writers of picture books it's just as laborious and difficult than writing a book that's 400 pages, because they have to make sense of all of that and decide what parts are they going to tell, and how are they going to tell it, and what words are they going to use. And so I think it's a different kind of work, but it's just as important, especially for our younger students. So she says something. One of her sayings is, children aren't too tender for tough topics, and that our young boys in this case can really make sense of a lot more things than what we think they can. And so I think authors like Carole Boston Weatherford, who have this gift of being able to uncover parts of history that may be ugly, but that tie into issues of fairness, kindness, civility, humility, integrity, a lot of those things that we talk about at Gilman, is truly amazing for our young kids. And I also think the fact that she can write pre-K all the way through 12, and then when she presents to like seniors, some of them will shed a tear because of how powerful her stuff is. She's definitely one of my favorites. So I just brought her new book, How Do You Spell Unfair, which is a story of Magnalia Cox and the National Spelling Bee, that she was going to win the spelling bee, or she won the spelling bee, but because of her color, she was denied the same rights as some of the others. And so, and Frank
That's a
Morrison.
True story.
Mm-hmm. True story, yeah. Yeah, I brought you, this is biography. I love biographies, that we share a lot with the boys, but all of her books, I would say Birmingham 1963 is another phenomenal piece of poem, a poem that she's written, but it has photographs, so it's pretty intense. And it mentions the girls who were blown up in the church. And I just think, it's so sparse. But I can't read that book without actually crying as I read it aloud. It's a very hard book to read. But I think it's a work of genius. So I think she's great, and she's a good person.
That's
and I
awesome.
think
That's awesome. You got her to come to Gilman.
Yeah. So I reached out to her, and I was like, hey, remember when I was just starting out, and you were, and now she's won multiple Coretta Scott King, honors.
Is that the highest award in
So the
children's...
Coretta Scott King Award is in recognition of a Black author or Black illustrator who, in honor of a Coretta Scott King, is promoting nonviolence, peace, and social change. And so it's bestowed by the American Library Association. That association bestows lots of awards, including the Newbery and the Caldecott, which are the most common that you may know about. But one thing that we've done as a library department, well, in the lower school especially, is when we present the award winners to students, we include, we only included, the Caldecott and the Newbery, and we just thought that was a very narrow-minded approach to reading great books. And so we now include, like 7 or 8 of the major ones, including the Sidney Taylor, which is for a Jewish experience. We also do the the Schneider Family Book Award, which is a book that honors a person with a learning difference or a learning disability, and the Coretta Scott King Award and those other things, which I've always used, and so I was kind of surprised that it wasn't part of that diversity and community feeling, since we have kids from all those backgrounds at Gilman, so they need to see themselves in some of these great books.
Love it. Well, thank you for taking the time today. It was fun.
Thank you.
Learned a lot about what you're doing in the lower school and some of your background in Paris, and some books that we should read. There's so many great books down there in the lower school, so hopefully we can get down there.
We have a lot of teachers who come and check out books for their kids, upper school and middle school teachers who come and check out books, and then they might grab one or two that I just kind of pass on to them, because I got to do some readers advisory when anyone comes in. So I look forward to hopefully reach out, meet your guys, and get them to look at some great books in the lower school.
I think that'd be great. All right, thanks a lot.